Hey everybody, this is drummer Johnny Radelat. You're listening to Jim on Bass.
Welcome back to another episode of the Jim on Bass Show. For today's very special guest, we have on one of my favorite drummers. He's recently stepped in the studio and completed his first album as a producer for Emily Wolfe's album, The Blowback. He's also played drums on that and also was a drummer for one of my favorites, the Gary Clark Jr. Band. He hails from Austin, Texas. Please welcome the great Johnny Radelat. Johnny, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Yeah, it's good to see you. And I know that your tour that you were just on with Emily Wolfe, right? It kind of wrapped up and you have a bit of a break right now, right?
Yeah, that was the last bit of touring for the year besides regional shows. I'm kind of done for the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're still acclimating, I imagine, right? Maybe to time zones and stuff like that.
You know what? I feel like I never fully adjust to the new time zones, so it's always I feel like I stay on Texas time no matter where I am. Yeah.
That's pretty good. And I know you're a big dog guy too, right? So do you kind of get to take the dogs out for a walk now and get back in the routine of things?
Yeah, and if you might hear some bulldogs snoring in the background or dogs barking, yeah. I got four
Okay.
big dogs. Yeah.
Well, I've seen some stuff on your Instagram. It looks like you even foster some dogs every now and then, right? Or are they failed fosters or
All the ones we have are failed fosters. That's right. Yeah.
do you ever take them on tour with you or?
Oh, I wish. That's kind of the dream, man. But not everybody loves your dog like you do,
Mm,
and it's yeah.
yeah. Well, I know you're supposed to have some downtime, right, since the tour wrapped up, but you said maybe some work just popped up. So, are you able to talk about it or?
Yeah. I'm doing, yeah, as soon as I got home, I got to start learning songs for some shows coming up this week in Austin. Playing with one of my favorite the Hammond organ, big monstrous
Yeah.
instrument that's like a beast to play because they play it like their feet and it's crazy. One of my favorite organ players in the country, Adam Scone, is doing a residency in Austin this week. And he was like the organ player for all the early Daptones
Mm,
records, Sharon Jones,
yeah.
Daptones. They also recorded the Amy Winehouse stuff there. And
Wow.
yeah, great organ player. He's going to be in Austin this week. So I'm excited about that. Got my work cut out for me with having to learn all his material in a few days.
It makes me think of Kenny Aronoff. I've had him on, and you probably know him. And
Saw that you had love Kenny. He's such a good vibe. I got to meet him once at a
mm,
festival, and he's such good vibes and such a strong, positive
yeah.
personality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it made me think of him and how he talks about when he gets work and he writes everything out in charts to keep it all straight. So, do you just listen to everything and memorize it, or how do you do it?
I take some notes, some general notes. I don't write out notation per se. I can
Mm,
read music a little bit, but it's not my go-to. I have my own notation that I
mm,
make, and like little sparks, things that'll jog my memory, like don't go here, like
mm,
if I find myself practicing something and I make the same mistakes over and over again, I'll write down what not to do,
uh,
judging by like my natural instincts if they're going against what I actually should be doing in an arrangement or whatever. But yeah, of course, like it's taking notes just helps jog your memory. I remember I used to do the same thing in studying for like college tests, like
mm,
how writing it all down just like jogs your memory, and even if you don't have that sheet of paper in front of you. So I'll make
yeah,
notes and I'll go a whole 90-minute set and not look at them once, but it all like
yeah.
kind of is in there because I know where it is on the page and I could remember like, oh, this song is where I wrote down this one thing. Yeah.
I played drums a little bit, and there's nothing worse than when everyone turns around and looks at you.
Man, yeah.
Would you ever have to like turn down work, or do you kind of rearrange your plans if something comes up?
I'm bad at turning down work because I find myself saying yes to everything if I can do it, if my schedule's open to it. Just because I've always had the philosophy that like it's always a learning experience, even if the music's not totally up my alley. Like I see that even more as a learning experience because I'm
Mm,
like, okay, I'm going outside my comfort zone in
yeah.
a genre that I'm not known for or used to.
And I try to live by that more and more. I've heard it every now and then lately. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and realizing that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one, man. It's so easy to stay in your comfort zone, and you
Yeah.
thrive in your comfort zone. So, but I feel like your comfort zone expands as you dabble outside of it.
Hmm.
You might push that boundary a little bit further every time.
Well, you're with Emily Wolfe now, right? So how did you guys meet? And it looks like she's maybe an Austin, Texas connection, or
Yeah, yeah, Austin, Texas connection. I actually met her at a festival somewhere in the Northeast. Yeah, I forget, somewhere in like a ski town in Jersey. We were all backstage watching Tom Petty close out the night. And I remember hearing about Emily in Austin, and she introduced herself, and that was like 5 or 6 years ago. And we linked up last year. She was getting ready to record this record, and we're super proud of this record that just came out a couple of weeks ago. And we've been started touring with her this year, and it's a new thing for me. But she's been doing it for a little while, and
mm.
she's kind of got a name out there, and
Yeah,
But
she
Austin connection, man. It seems like there's never a lack of drummer work being based out of Austin.
yeah,
It's
good
a good
problems
place.
to have.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Well, some of the new songs I like on the album are "Dead End Luck," "Walk in My Shoes," and "Second of
Cool.
Relief." So I saw you're considered kind of a songwriter with that too. Like, do you help write the
Um,
lyrics or?
no, that's Emily's a really strong song. I enjoy songwriting. It's more of a practice for me, and I dream of becoming a better songwriter. It's kind of an aspiration more than anything. As drummer, I get kind of stuck in a role
Mhm.
of, you don't exactly get looked to for lyric help as a drummer a lot of times, but I write my own stuff and
Mm,
try to put it out there here and there. Yeah.
nice. Yeah. Well, what other instruments do you play guitar then, or you sing a little bit? It sounds like.
Play enough guitar to sit around a campfire and
Mhm.
maybe do something. Nobody would ever pay me to entertain them on a guitar, though. And enough one finger keyboards to like put together MIDI. But nowadays with production the way it is, you could get a MIDI keyboard and tap out horn
Yeah.
parts and all that stuff. It's so easy now to make your own music without knowing your way around the keyboard or guitar,
Mhm.
which is a huge help for those of us that don't play a melodic instrument.
Mm.
Drums are limiting in that sense, and when you're writing, you're not writing chord changes.
Mm.
You're writing patterns, and it's very two-dimensional in that sense.
Well, it is your first time producing then, right? So how did you get asked to do that?
Emily produced most. I think she's titled the producer in
Mm.
it, and I've got some credits producing through COVID. A band called the Reese Brothers from Florida asked me to produce their record, and then I started doing this project called Town Radio, which is a production project with an engineer, guitar player, producer friend of mine who moved here from Cincinnati,
Mm.
and we were all COVID locked down, and we're like, hey, let's do this project. We all knew musicians all around the world, and we would put together skeletons of ideas and send them to people, and they would send back tracks,
Mm.
and it was all kind of done remotely, and it became a really fun thing that kind of stuck. And we're working on our second full album release, and I've been releasing stuff steadily over the last year and a half or so.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, and that's super fun because I get to involve people across the world to be like, just send them bass tracks, right? By bass tracks, I mean like root, like drums, percussions, general ideas, and be like, do what you will with it. You could fart on the track and send it back. And if we end up keeping something, we just include them as songwriters on it. And,
Oh,
whatever they want to do, no direction, just do it, and we'll chop it up and use it where we can.
awesome. Can people check that out and listen to
Yeah,
those
it's
tracks?
it's it's streaming on it's streaming under the name Town Radio. And it's on Spotify and
Okay.
iTunes, and it's mostly instrumental. You'll hear my voice very very blanketed and mangled with effects here and there, but yeah, it's a lot of instrumental dub. You're familiar with dub music where
Yeah, a
it's
little bit.
affected and mostly instrumental,
Hmm.
and we purposefully take stuff and then kind of remix it in
Hmm.
itself and make it kind of a moodier kind of instrumental dub piece. And in the vein, a lot of it is reggae beats and stuff like that, some hip hop ish stuff. It's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't play with, that I don't play with the rock bands I tour with, stuff that I love that I don't get to play
Hmm.
or perform on tour all the time.
Keeps it fresh.
Yeah, totally, totally.
One last thing on Emily Wolfe, then I was curious, in terms of future gigs for you. I saw she's opening up for the Gaslight Anthem in Europe next summer. Are you going on that or?
Yeah, we just did a tour with them. We just did a month-long tour with them in the beginning of the summer through the US, and that went really well. And the lead singer, Brian Fallon, asked Emily to start writing songs and record a record with him. So they're
Wow.
they're going out next month and recording a record. She's recording a record up there in Jersey, where those guys are from, and their label's going to release it before our Europe tour together.
Mm.
And yeah, they kind of like taking her under their wing a little bit and putting her out there. And I love touring in Europe, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's
And
gonna
they
be
and
great.
they do well in Europe. We'll
Mm.
have it'll be nice for Emily because she hasn't been to Europe much.
Okay.
It'll be a nice, good exposure for her. And yeah, and those guys are fucking great, dude. Really fun dudes, really down to earth. Are you a fan of Gaslight?
Yeah, yeah. I'm a fan from their earlier albums when they first kind of made it big. Because I
Yeah.
remember one of my favorite guys, Bruce Springsteen, I guess, is a big fan of theirs.
He's on, actually. They just released a record a few weeks ago, and he's on the title track, I think, or one of the, maybe it's the title track, but anyways, he's on like the second or third
Oh,
song on
okay.
the record. And yeah, and you hear Bruce come in, you're like, that's Bruce.
Yeah, there he is.
Yeah.
Well, I know you were born in the land of Bruce, right, in New Jersey.
I was born in Jersey City
Wow. Okay.
and kind of grew up there.
Okay.
Um, I lived there till I was 13.
Mm. Then you went to Miami, right?
Yeah, my folks moved from Union City, New Jersey, which is right there on the Jersey side of the Lincoln Tunnel. Um, Staring our apartment stared at the Empire State Building.
Wow.
So like, and it was, that area was too unsafe when I was young to like roam around as a kid outside. So I would just be leaned up on the window looking out over at the city and watching the craziness going on in the street. And yeah, it was cool. And then we moved to Miami where I could go outside and ride bike and play with neighborhood kids like a normal kind
Hmm.
of normal kid life. Yeah.
And then I guess was coming to Austin, was that like your adult move to kind of get your life going, or how'd you get to Austin?
Um Honestly, I went for a woman. Yeah, who I'm now married to.
Okay. Oh, you are married to her?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. So it worked
And
out.
yeah, it worked out. And it was like the obvious next move. I lived in Nashville for a little while after college. Didn't love Nashville at the time, and ended up knowing of Austin through a couple of bands. I don't know if you know the Greyhounds.
Yeah, I heard of them. Yeah.
They're a heavily touring band. They would come through Florida all the time. Made friends with them, and I called them up after my now wife moved there, and I was like, hey, considering going to check out Austin, and I was on my way over, and they're like, cool, we just lost our drummer. We're playing this new festival called Austin City Limits in 10 days. Here's all our stuff. Learn the tunes. And
Wow.
my first gig in Austin was a young Austin City Limits festival.
Yeah.
No,
That's not bad.
not bad.
Yeah.
And this was in '07.
Mm.
Austin was a good place to be, right, especially around that time. The scene was still small, and easily maneuverable.
Mm,
You could go out any night of the week and go to a weekly gig and see and meet and talk to and play with maybe all the touring musicians or anybody who was doing something, it's a good little incestuous kind of network of
mm.
musicians.
Yeah, because now I was going to ask you, it's as you know, it's a lot different now, right? With the music scene, the comedy scene, it's kind of blowing up, right?
Yeah, the comedy scene's kind of the new thing. The comedy
Yeah,
scene's kind of taken over. Um, I
Joe
feel like the
Rogan,
comedy
right?
scene, the comedy seems to be the place. If I was like starting up as a stand up comic, I feel like Austin would be the spot to move to,
Mm,
and kind of cut your teeth a little bit in the local scene.
yeah.
Um, the music scene, unfortunately, it's become like any other big city where it's a little bit fractured and compartmentalized to scenes and areas.
Hmm.
Like there's the East Austin scene, there's a South Austin scene. It used to be a little bit more intermixing because it
Okay.
was smaller city.
Yeah, I went there during COVID and it was cool, but I feel like it wasn't quite authentic because I think it was like 2021. So I need to go
Yeah,
back to really experience it, I think.
yeah. You need to go back in time.
Yeah. Well, I was just curious growing up, were you kind of the type to hang out at record stores or do you remember maybe saving up and buying albums as a kid or anything like that?
I kind of fed off of what my parents had
Mm,
as album collection, and I have an older sister,
okay.
and her and her friends were my cool at the time. Like anybody, your older siblings are the cool and the kind of meter. Yeah, and I remember a few records she had that like I would like on my little. I had like a little Disney record player thing that came with like the Jungle Book album and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs on a record or whatever. And I remember playing like Quiet Riot
Mm.
or some like 80s rocker stuff on there when I was really young, and like that some Rick Springfield song that caught my ear. It might have been Jesse's Girl.
Yeah.
Was that Rick Springfield? Yeah.
I just heard that at the
Um
gym yesterday. I was like, oh, this is a good one.
yeah. I remember my sister had the 45 of the Outfield. Look, I forget what that hit was. Um, yeah. Anyways, stuff like that. And my dad had some records that I remember really liking. I mean, it was all kind of late 70s funk,
Mm,
boogie, a little bit of disco, and a whole lot of Afro-Cuban stuff,
mm,
which, my parents are Cuban. Like
yeah.
that was kind of what you were hearing in the house back then.
Yeah, I was gonna ask because they came from Cuba, right? So it sounds like they did influence your taste a little bit.
Oh yeah, there was no getting around it. As much as I was like, as a kid, I
Mm,
didn't really appreciate the culture I was brought up around till I
mm,
got a little bit older, and I was like, man, that was cool that I got to,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think you're also a sports fan, right? Or are you mainly an NBA or?
I am. I grew up wanting to play basketball. Yeah. Um,
Because are you a big
yeah.
LeBron guy? Maybe I thought I've seen some old posts or something on
Yeah.
Instagram.
Well, Miami.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm a Miami Heat fan. Those the first NBA games I went to
Mm.
were Heat games before pre-LeBron. This was
Alonzo
Alonzo
Mourning.
Mourning,
Yeah.
Harding,
Tim
or
Hardaway.
wait, or Tim Hardaway. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So you got some good taste. I'm a Warrior fan, but a real Warrior fan, like you said before, it was the cool thing to do.
Right, right,
Antoine
right.
Jameson, Jason Richardson, those are my guys.
And I grew up the neighborhood we moved to in Miami was just like it was a dream for a 13, 14-year-old boy who's like into basketball, baseball, skateboarding. Like you would just like peek out the window and there'd be a skateboard ramp in the middle of the street,
Mm.
and then some kids walking up the street to play baseball in the field up there. And one of my neighbors ended up actually playing major leagues.
Wow.
His dad, whenever it was football season or basketball season, we'd all be out playing football or basketball. His dad would come drive by and be like, "Get in the car, you're going to
Wow.
the batting cages or whatever." And it paid off. He ended up Alex Gonzalez. He ended up being a shortstop
Yeah.
for. Yeah,
Was he on the Marlins maybe?
he was Marlins, Blue Jays for a while.
Yeah.
He was. he was unfortunately on the Cubs when the whole Bartman thing
Oh, yeah, yeah.
happened. He infamously has an error that started that rally that the Marlins had against, was it the Marlins they were playing with
Yeah, yep.
the Bartman thing?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember the shortstop, Alex
Yeah.
Gonzalez, who kind of bobbled what could have been a double play, started a rally
Mm,
that ended up later that inning in the Bartman incident. I think
wow.
fortunately for him, Bartman got the brunt
Yeah.
of Chicago's rage after that.
Now he's in hiding.
Right. But he ended up having a good solid career. He was like 2 or 3 years older than me, so he was my sister's age. And
Okay.
you kind of knew he was going to kind of do it because his family was way into it. Like I said,
Mm,
pulling him out off the basketball court when
yeah.
it was, yeah.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I'm putting the details together in my head. I actually got his autograph as a kid, and I remember that I have the ball somewhere. Yeah.
No shit.
I remember he had a cool signature, and I still have it somewhere in my room. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
That's
I want to say
funny.
he played for the Red Sox too for a little while. He was in Boston for a while, I think, too.
Okay.
But yeah.
Because I do remember getting it in spring training when he was on the Cubs. So yeah, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's
That's
got to
so
be,
cool.
yeah, it's got to be interesting too. Playing with Gary Clark Jr. and you're an NBA guy. He's a thin, tall guy. Do people ever give the look like, oh, this guy's a basketball player if they didn't recognize him as Gary Clark?
Um, he could ball too. That's the funny thing is like he could
Okay.
kind of, yeah, he was kind of, I feel like he's like physically and athletically natural at a lot of things. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you'd see him like pick up a ping pong pad. I'm like, holy shit, you can fucking ping pong. Okay. Yeah.
Man, it must
But
be
yeah,
nice.
he could shoot hoops too. Yeah.
Okay. Well, were there any pro athletes that were a fan of the band, maybe that surprised you throughout the years?
Man, we were in one thing that really got me was we were in Miami once and Bosch was
Mm.
he was injured at the time and the Heat were playing that night. So I think he shouldn't have been at our show. And I remember a lot of my friends who saw him side stage were like, what the fuck, man? He's injured. He shouldn't be out drinking beers side stage at a show. I don't know if I should be saying this on a podcast either because I was into it. He was like side stage drinking beers and enjoying the
Wow.
show. I guess he plays a little guitar. He's a
Huh.
blues guy.
I didn't know that. It makes sense
Yeah.
though. I saw him in LA randomly at a Lenny Kravitz show when I was leaving. I was like, "Oh,
Okay.
that's Chris
Yeah.
Bosh." So it's
That
all adding up.
tracks. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I see a lot of beach photos too. So are you a big surfer when you can, or?
No, I'm a big beach guy. And, growing up in Florida, I would paddle out when there were storms. And I had friends who were consistently surfing. That's kind of a dream of mine. I feel like to really do it, you got to live somewhere, wake up every morning at dawn and paddle out every day for 6 months straight to really get it.
Gotcha.
Like now when I paddle out, like somebody tried to take me out to Swami's break in San Diego area. I don't know if you know that break,
Mm.
but it's all over like surf magazines, surf videos. And
Okay.
it's like, they're like, no problem. Just come out. We got a perfect board for you. We got a wetsuit for you. Just paddle out. We'll show you the way. It'll be super easy. And I get out there and it's like a fucking deep ass reef break with like a 10-foot wall of wave. That's like,
Damn.
when you feel that pressure under the water and you're like in the swell moving 20 feet over because of the pressure of the water. That shit is scary, man.
No, I'm a good paddle boarder. I stick to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a surfer by any means. I strive to the dream for me is always like, man, I want to be like retired, be one of those fucking gray haired fuckers with riding out with a longboard on the bike every
Yeah.
morning. Yeah.
Well, it made me wonder too. You talked about being married. So does your wife join you on the road, or you just do a lot of like FaceTime stuff?
Um, no, she'll, you know how it is. It ends up being work and she's like, it's not fun if you're like going from city to city every
Yeah.
day. So if we have like a break of like, oh, we're in Denver for 3 days and she'll come out for if we have some days off and stuff. Or we'll
Hmm.
meet up like recently at the end of an Emily Wolfe tour. We met up and went out to in San Francisco and went out, rented a car, went up to Russian River Valley and
Oh,
got a
cool.
cabin there and went to beaches every day. So yeah, we'll do at the end of a tour when I could like take time and actually do stuff, you know.
Yeah, not just be recovering.
Because otherwise, yeah, otherwise you're seeing a hotel lobby, a lunch spot, and a music venue for the rest of the day till
Yeah,
midnight, and then you might get lucky enough to see a bar or two
right.
after the show, and that's off on to the next city. So, you know,
When you're kind of in that phase of just, like city night after night, do you ever get lost trying to find your hotel room or forget to write it down and have to go through that?
I yeah, it happens to me a couple of times a week where I have to go to the front desk with my ID and be like, it's kind of embarrassing. They're like, oh, you need another room key. I'm like, no, I got my room key, but can you tell me? And this is after I've walked. I know it's on the fourth floor. I'm walking by every door, tapping it with the electric key, seeing if it turns green. And after it just literally just happened to me like 3 or 4 nights ago in Cali somewhere, where I got to go to the front desk, and they're like, "How do you not remember your hotel number?" I'm like, "You don't understand. I'm in a different hotel every
Yeah.
night of the week," and
Do you know who I am?
and it's like, man, it is tough if you don't. I've gotten used to like when I first check in, like, and I hit that elevator button, be like, okay, fifth floor, and then walk my way over and be like 512, commit it to memory. But
Yeah.
if I'm like, if you're thinking about something else and you're autopilot, walk to the room, check in, and then you go downstairs for the first time, you're like, go back inside. You're like, wait a second, 324? No, that was last night. Three,
Yeah.
yeah. But they
But
but they know it. Luckily, they have that information at the front desk. So,
yeah, that happened to me. I was in Vegas the other day seeing U2 at the Sphere, and
ooh,
it was amazing. And
man,
they gave me the
that's
wrong
awesome.
room number, so I had the key, and the people thought I was breaking in their room. And the hotel desk, they set me up for failure on that one.
Oh man, that you too. So I was our last stop on this tour that I just flew home from Vegas yesterday,
Oh, okay.
and our last stop was at a venue called the Area 15, which is part of like Meow Wolf, that Meow Wolf thing, which is like an adult interactive art installation
Oh,
kind of
okay.
thing. Um, anyways, it was you could see the Sphere from where that was. And man, it looks so. All the videos I've seen of the Sphere thing, it looks so cool. And I'm a U2 fan, so
Oh, good.
yeah, that sounds really cool.
I got my U2 shirt on right here.
Yeah, cool one.
Yeah, I'm actually going back in December so I can get different vantage points because I'm a huge fan.
Oh,
And
cool.
you got to go. There's one part where, as you know, it's a sphere, but the way the lighting is, it looks like the ceiling's coming down on you at one point. It's
Oh,
super
wow.
cool. Yeah. So you got to get to that one.
Man, it looks amazing from the outside of that
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Are you able to go to shows as a fan, or just being in a band kind of ruined that for you? Because I've heard some people don't really like going to shows much after that.
Yeah, it kind of, if you're working a lot and like at festivals every weekend, it gets to a point where you're like, oh, I don't want to go see a band. But man, I've been lucky enough to never lose that thing.
Mm,
Um, and actually, the couple years of break of COVID kind of
mm,
re-energized me with that.
that's good.
I feel a little more youthful and open-eyed from COVID kind of settling things a little bit.
Mm,
But I'm always more than anything a fan. Like, even, what I strive for is to try to make people feel at least a minute similarity to what I feel when I walk into a room and you hear that sound and you're like,
yeah.
oh, you get excited and get goosebumps, and you want to push your way. You don't even know you're doing it, but you're like pushing your way to the front and elbowing
Yeah.
people. And like, I want to create that to other people,
Yeah.
that's the goal.
Well, has your musical taste or influence has it kind of grown by being in bands and being around different people, do you think, or
I wouldn't say grown, changed. Yeah,
mm,
definitely. Because yeah, and I don't know that I was necessarily musically smarter as a
mm,
listener 20 years ago.
mm,
I might have had a better, more open musical taste back then because I didn't have such like rules. Like, no, they're
mm.
doing it wrong, or
Yeah.
because that's a bad influence sometimes if you're steeped into genres or whatever, and you're kind of like, oh, they're not doing that the right way. When
Mm,
you're younger, it's like there's no rules. There's just what feels good and sounds good.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's definitely evolved over the years, and I feel like I look for kind of a deeper thing in music that I wasn't looking for
Mm,
back then. I kind of, and with life and experience, you relate to things more. You know, there's more. The longer you've been on this earth, the more you have to relate to, I suppose. So,
yeah.
you know,
Well, as a drummer, for me, it was always more fun to be able to play and be able to kind of sing along or like be into the song. So I'm always curious, is it more fun for you to play a technically difficult song, or do you like a little easier you can get into it?
nah, I like the easier get into it for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, and I'm not a technical player by any means. I definitely am a meat and potato,
Mm,
stick to the basics, groove oriented player. But yeah, there's something, I would take a good deep feel and something I'm kind of dancing behind the kit to,
mm,
rather than, oh, I got to do this move over here and then move to this other thing over here.
yeah.
Um, that stuff is gratifying when you get done with it. You're like, whoo, I just did it. But in it, it's not as gratifying as just like doing a little dance and really
Yeah.
feel something.
And
And
what?
I love singing and playing too. I mean,
Mm,
that's, I
yeah.
when I listen to music, I definitely don't listen for the drum parts. I kind of am hearing the
Yeah.
song.
Well, when you've been playing for a while, you're not old at all, but you've been playing for a while. So it made me wonder. I see like Larry Mullen Jr. He's got like a back to his chair. I know some guys like special seats. So you're still just doing the simple seat, right?
Yeah, but every time, man, every time I use a backline kit, or like what they backline, for anybody out there that doesn't know, is what's at a festival or on stage that you can use if you like
Mm,
flew out and you didn't bring a kit or whatever. When I'm using other people's kits or backline kits and it has that little backrest, I was looking at it, I'm like, I don't need that shit. But every once in a while, I'll lean back and it'd be like, ooh, this is nice. And man, yeah, hips are an issue, lower back's an issue. We just did an opener for Tool,
mm.
and they were saying that they were taking some time off after this run of shows because the drummer's getting a hip replacement.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but you watch what that dude is doing. I don't know if are you familiar with Tool stuff at all?
Kind of casual. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's there. I mean, he's an athlete.
Yeah.
It's like it's super. He's if you just look at his drum kit, it's like
It's not just a
he's
crash and a cymbal. Yeah.
yeah, he's all over the place with it, and like playing stuff behind him with it, and yeah, and super masterful. And but yeah, a lot of it's not unheard of for drummers to get hip replacements after a certain age and
Wow.
stuff like that. Yeah, it
When,
also depends. You also, I feel like I'm getting starting to get there where I'm changing my playing a little bit. And
mm,
I mean, I feel like every year that goes by, I sit up a little bit straighter, because like I used to just hunch over and have terrible posture and hold the sticks
yeah.
in a god awful, like the wrong way. but but whatever, however you feel the most comfortable playing is what I always tell people.
Yeah.
There's no right way. If something's works for you, then make it work.
What makes you
But
wonder? Oh.
over time, you start to see why they tell you to mechanically do it the right way, because you can't live like that for decades and decades and decades without physical issues.
It's kind of like in the gym, they say to lift this way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then it's like, oh, they were right. Now that I need surgery.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I thought it was kind of cool some of the bands you've toured with too. Like, I think you toured with Kings of Leon at one point, right?
Yeah, we did a tour supporting them.
I just wonder,
Um,
were they wild? I remember they were kind of known for being wild. I think they've calmed down now, but was
I
there?
think this was we caught the phase of theirs just after this documentary that came out,
Oh
that I don't
yeah,
know if
I
I know
saw that
you
one.
yeah, and that showed them not in the greatest light. I'm
Yeah,
surprised that that even came out, it was able to make it out there. But
Kind of like a swamp area where they're from, it seems like.
yeah, I think we caught them in kind of
Mm,
chiller days.
okay.
And they were like flying home every other night
Uh,
because they were all just recently married, and you know, but yeah, that was cool, man. I actually have a good friend that I went to college with that was playing in, I said I went to college. We were both playing in bands at during college days
mm,
in Gainesville, Florida together. And he's the fifth member of Kings of Leon who plays like all the guitar parts and the keyboard parts on stage,
okay.
where and you'll see him in the dark back there, but he's
Yeah.
playing all the parts that they don't play that are on the record and stuff like that. Tim, yeah.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and those guys are cool. I've gotten a chance to cross paths with them a few times, and yeah, and that tour made me a fan because I wasn't a
Mm,
not that I wasn't a fan, I just didn't know their stuff till that
yeah.
tour. And after hearing them a couple of nights, I was like, man, they have such a distinct sound, and his vocal quality is like, you hear it, the radio's turned up to 2, you can barely hear it coming through. But if it's Kings of Leon, you notice that voice and
Yeah.
like it cuts through. And yeah,
Mm. Well, you mentioned Gainesville, Florida, and you spoke earlier about seeing Tom Petty, the end of his set there. He's one of my favorites, and
yeah,
you guys got to open up for them, right? So that must have been amazing.
man, we did a couple of shows on his what ended up
Wow,
being the last tour.
man.
Um, and I remember for some reason, this is when I was playing with Gary, and remember for some reason we had, I think it was put out there that we could have done the whole tour, but there were
Uh,
some conflicts, and it didn't happen the way. And I was like super heartbroken about not doing the whole tour because I'm like you, I'm a huge Tom Petty fan, and Steve Froney, his
mhm.
current drummer,
That was
that dude,
amazing.
Average White Band,
Yeah.
fucking Shaka Khan, like all these 70s and 80s greats. He's had one of the better. You should get him on the
I've
podcast.
been trying. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe you can be my recommendation.
dude, he's a pretty. I don't know him personally or anything. I've met him a couple of times, but he's a pretty attainable dude. I've
Oh,
heard of people doing sessions with him in LA. I think he's based out of
okay.
LA now, and dude, that guy's the stuff his album list, his like discography is insane. Like the
Mm,
stuff he's played with, like just Average White Band alone,
yeah.
and then ending up with as Tom Petty's drummer. But
And he's got the
yeah,
cool accent.
unfortunately, that was yeah, and he's got that British accent, that really nasally British
Yeah.
accent. I'm not going to recreate that. Try to recreate that. But man, he's got a funny accent to listen to too. But yeah, it was unfortunately that was we got to do a couple shows, including their Austin show, and dude, he played for like 2.5 hours,
Wow.
and you forget like every song. You're like, oh, that fucking song,
Yeah.
oh, that one. It's like so many bangers, and just and it's feel I with I call him one of the like iconic acts or legendary acts, like the Bruce Springsteens, Paul
Yeah.
McCartney's, Tom Petty. That in that in that realm, he's one of those. But he's like the one of those that like I feel like wrote the songs in a way that he could sing them well into his older age, and they
Yeah.
still sounds like he's still living the story he's
Mm,
telling, and his voice is fitting of them even old age. I don't think he ever had to like down tune a song or
mhm.
change the keys of songs like a lot of when you
Yeah.
write something for yourself when you're 25 years old is different than when you're 65.
Mhm.
um
And he could still
yeah,
smoke a cigarette and sound good,
dude, yeah, he wrote them so he could chain smoke cigarettes and still sing them, I think. Yeah,
I'm so happy I got to see that last tour. I saw him probably a handful of times, but I got a dog and she was a puppy, and I almost didn't go because I didn't want to leave her. And then I'm so glad I went. It ended up being one of the final shows. I would have kicked myself forever.
yeah, dude, yeah,
Um,
that's why, yeah, you never know. Yeah.
yeah. Well, another legend you got to tour with, play some shows with, is Robert Plant, right? I know you have a cool picture with him. That must have been amazing.
Yeah, I did a whole shit. I didn't. We were out with him for like 2 months.
Mm.
I was playing with the Last International, which is a New York band that's now based out of Portugal. Um, and we were they were actually they had oh God, his name's gonna fail me now. They had the drummer from Rage Against the Machine drumming with them
Oh, Brad
last.
Wilk, right?
Brad Wolfe, thank you. Who I'm a huge fan of. I grew up, Rage Against the Machine is my one of my favorite bands in middle school and high school, and they something happened. I think Brad got asked to play with like Smashing Pumpkins or something, and like I've been friends with this band for a while, and they're like, "Hey, we see you're off the road right now. Come out and do this thing." We're opening for Robert Plant through Europe, and through the biggest clincher of this was through the UK, Scotland, all of the UK, and ending in Ireland. And the coolest thing was it was Plant going back to cities in the UK that he hadn't been to since since Zeppelin was touring like 500 seater
Wow.
theaters. And one of the venues, for instance, and he was super quick to give you a little John, especially he knew his audience at all times, like walking into catering. He'd see me sitting at the table and he'd casually say John Bonham in passing, and what, and he'd see everybody's ears spark up, especially the drummers, and he would just tell a story about, once me and Bonzo biked from our hometown, which is like 30 miles from here. We biked from there to here to see some girl and blah, 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 and all
Wow.
these cool stories. And one of the rooms we were in on that tour was the room that they hadn't had Stairway to Heaven fully written yet,
Uh,
but they tried it out live in this room for the first time. And he said it was an epic fail, that they had to go back to the drawing board with it. And I'm like, I'm sure it was
yeah.
already pretty
Yeah.
fucking good. But yeah, to
That's
see him reminisce, he'd be like, "Oh, the last time I was in this room was 1970 Zeppelin,"
mm,
you know.
yeah. It's like you're in your own rock doc at that point.
Yeah, right.
Did you get to play some Zeppelin songs with him or?
No, and like the stuff he did on that tour kind of leans toward, he didn't want to do the Zeppelin
Mm,
heavy guitar stuff. He was doing it was so he had this kind of I forget what he was calling it, but he's very into like Moroccan and Eastern scale stuff.
hmm
And he kind of did versions of Zeppelin tunes that were in that world.
Okay.
And he kind of said it a couple times, and he's like, and I remember on this tour, it was when it was all over the press in the UK that Zeppelin got offered all this money to do a reunion, right? And he came in the next day, like very vocal about it all. He's like, these fuckers, they don't understand. Like, it's not going to be Zeppelin. Like, I'm doing, we don't need to go there again. It's not never going to be the same. And it seemed like he had the mentality of, if it's not John Bonham, it's not Zeppelin.
Mm,
Even if it's Jason Bonham,
yeah.
he's like, it's not the same thing. Why are we recreating something we already did? I don't think he was ever. I think that's a cool thing about him. He wasn't ever into recreating that.
Yeah. I wish he was though.
I know, so everybody does. So every show,
Yeah.
there's like a room of 3,000 people who wishes
Yeah.
they would just play Immigrant Song,
Yeah.
just.
What? I saw him at the Greek Theater in Berkeley, and I saw you guys there too. And when he was with Alison Krauss, and they played some Zeppelin songs, and it
Yeah.
was so cool to hear his voice just echo like in those outdoor kind of spaces. It
Oh,
was
dude. Yeah.
surreal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another great show that I remember I saw you guys at, because I work as a paramedic at the time 5 years ago, and I got to be a part of private events, and I realized the awesome perk that people get when they get these private shows. So we were there on standby just in case anything happens, and you guys played a show for Salesforce with Foo Fighters and the Killers. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah. In the Bay Area,
Yeah,
right?
Pier 70 in San Francisco. It's kind of an industrial, weird looking area.
Weird
Yeah.
compound with like different
Yeah.
stages, different buildings, and
hmm
like that was super fucking cool. And we got to play with the Foo Fighters and the Killers.
Yeah.
Um,
special
Yeah,
memory of mine seeing you
totally
guys.
remember that night. Yeah. If I remember correctly, we had a really bad set.
Yeah.
But
Well, I didn't think it was bad, but I met Gary Clark after for the first time, and I was like, "Hey, I'm a big fan." And he said, "Hey, did you like it?" And I said, "Yeah, I liked X, Y, and Z." And he goes, "Oh, really? You did? Like, are you sure?" Like, he kept, and it was kind of cool to see you guys be kind of almost self-conscious in a way, because I
yeah,
loved you guys already.
I think it was one of those things where we like flew in day of right before,
Mm,
got there and kind of got thrown on,
yeah.
when you're on a bill with bands much bigger than you have to like, you might not get a sound check. You might just get
Mm,
thrown on stage and your monitors you might not be hearing what's going on.
gotcha.
But you might be seeing a guitar player doing this and you're not hearing it at
And
all.
just to look
And,
around. Or...
and you're looking around. Yeah, you're going
Mm,
on pure sense of smell,
mm,
but and I think it was one of those, you know,
yeah.
that's and that was kind of early in touring days. We were probably all very unpro about like letting people know real quick what went wrong with the show, which is like,
Yeah.
after years of doing this, you start to realize like nobody needs to hear that shit or
Yeah.
wants to hear that shit. Like you don't want to hear that shit.
Well, another cool tour. I'm bummed that I missed you guys on it because I think it was like in Italy. You opened up with Lenny Kravitz, right? And he's my favorite musician, so that must have been pretty cool.
Yeah, man. Well, and I will say one of those shows was when people say like, "Oh, what's the coolest venue you've ever played at?" Red Rocks pops up, but
Mm.
there's a Coliseum, and in Italy they use some of the old Coliseums where lions killed people for sport and entertainment.
Wow.
Um, some of those old Coliseums they use as small sporting event or concert event spaces now. And the backstage area or the green rooms are fucking holding cells for
Damn.
goddamn lions and bears and whatever you know whatever whatever
Yeah.
the blood sport show they were putting on back then was about. There was like, you're in these rooms that are like, it's wild, man.
How backstages have grown through the years, I guess.
Yeah.
The irony.
Yeah.
And I don't think she was the drummer at the time, but she obviously was for a long time with Lenny Kravitz. And I think you're both Gretsch drummers, right? Cindy
Cindy,
Blackman.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you know
Cindy
her,
Black.
if you looked up to her at all growing up.
Yeah, Cindy Blackman. Now Cindy Blackman Santana
Tana, yeah.
yeah. Um yeah, man, she was, I remember one of my, not early, I think I was already like 18 or 19 when I saw this show, because I was just starting college. But I went to see Lenny,
Mm,
and it was when Cindy had the big afro
yeah.
that was like moving around like this. Watching when she's bobbing her head, it's like moving at a different tempo.
Maybe the
And I just
Circus
remember,
album.
yeah, and I remember seeing like being at the back of this arena, and just like the way she plays, and like it's very like body, like
Hmm.
probably bad mechanics that she's
Yeah.
probably I've noticed she's gotten a little straighter in the years, but it was so visual and so like interactive, the playing, where like even if you don't know drums, you see it and you're like, oh, that's cool, I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
Like you, she is huge influence, yeah. And everybody, she's amazing, and everybody gives her the credit of being, oh, the greatest female drummer. She's one of my top five
Yeah.
greatest drummers, period, walking the earth right now. Like,
Hmm. I had her on, and I felt weird even saying female drummer. I felt like, why am I even saying
yeah,
that?
I'm sure she gets it a lot though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And and only because, and it's good that people talk about it, it's only because there's not enough female drummers
Hmm.
out there. It's not something, I don't know, hopefully that's changing. I'm seeing more on Instagram, more female
Hmm.
drummers out there.
I see that one young girl from like England. She does covers of
Yeah.
all the songs. Yeah.
Oh yeah. The Foo Fighters have her up
Yeah.
every once
Yeah.
in a while. Yeah. And she's all energy too. Yeah. I'm hoping that sparks, some next generation
Yeah.
female drummers out there. Yeah.
I don't know if you ever listened to the Donnas. They're one of my favorites. And she's one I think that maybe might have had some bad form on her sticks. And I think she had surgery. And I never heard from her again. So she was
Really?
one of my,
Yeah.
Tori Castellano. She was one of my favorite drummers.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, she chokes up on her sticks, which I kind of do
Yeah.
too in loud situations. Yeah. Which is bad form. But yeah, man, it's not,
Yeah.
yeah, I love the Donnas. Donna's L7, Lush. There's a lot of like female bands that are,
Donna's need to make a comeback.
I
I'm
know,
ready.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, being from Austin, Texas, what was it like being able to play Austin City Limits, the music venue? That must have been pretty surreal.
Oh, awesome, man. Yeah, and they have like now they have the theater and an arena.
Mm,
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's not as big as you would think, or they do the TV show there. I don't
yeah.
know. And I remember even growing up in the New York area and in Miami, that TV, I guess it's on PBS, so you got
Yeah.
it everywhere. But I remember seeing Stevie Ray Vaughan on that, and there's a couple of classic performances on that when I finally moved to Austin. And I remember I went to one of the tapings once and saw that it was a backdrop. Well, I saw when I was in line, we were going inside, and I'm like, no, wait a second, this is an outside show because you see the city,
Uh,
you see the
the
backdrop of the
stars. Yeah.
stage it was the skyline of Austin at the time. Now that skyline's tripled,
Mm.
but it was the skyline of Austin, and I'm like going inside a studio, and I'm like, oh, it's all fake trees, and it's all a set. Um, and they do, it's a lot smaller than it looks like on TV,
Mm.
but yeah, it's a cool thing to play, and the TV show's still going. It's one of the
Yeah.
longest running music TV shows of all time, I want to
Wow.
say, right?
I believe you.
Yeah, I know. I think so. I don't think I'm making that up. I think it's one of the longest running consistent
Mm.
consistently running live music TV shows of all time. Yeah.
I did a tour of it when we were in Austin, and we were so bummed because Matthew McConaughey was inside doing like a fundraiser he does every year, and they wouldn't let us look. So we got to
Ah.
tour the outside. So, but he's like the unofficial mayor of Austin or something, right? Him and Willie Nelson.
He is. I have a feeling you watch in like I have a feeling in like, and I've heard him in interviews talk. I have a feeling like 10 years, once his kids are fully grown, I have
Oh,
a feeling he'll probably go into Texas politics,
mm.
and he'll
I could see
probably
that.
be successful at it too.
Yeah, right on, right on.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, it's been fun to have you on, and surreal for me because I actually met you. I don't know if you remember this, but not meeting me, but I drove down from the Bay Area because I got so excited you guys were playing a show at Amoeba Hollywood, probably like 5 or 6 years ago. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think it was either right before or right after you guys played SNL, and it was just so cool to see you guys right there after SNL. And
Okay, so yeah, so this was like 4 or 5. It must have been 2019 or something. Yeah, the last.
yeah, yeah,
I think that's the last time I played at Amoeba, and I've
okay,
done that gig a handful of times. It's always amazing.
yeah.
Did you notice that in the crowd at that show, Clem Burke from Blonde, the drummer from Blondie,
Oh
was
no,
in the front, and there were only like what 75 people in the
yeah.
room, maybe, right?
I
Because it
have
was
some
regular.
videos, so I'll have to look at my videos from that show.
Look in your videos. He's like, if you're standing on stage, it's stage left, crowd right side. But he's like standing there with his wife.
Huh.
Um, and I noticed on stage, and I'm like mouthing to the bass player who's also a Blondie fan. I'm mouthing to Johnny Bradley. I'm like, it's fucking Clem Burke. It's fucking Clem Burke over there. So as soon as we got done, I went to the Blondie section and grabbed whatever Blondie I don't have on vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked 2 records, including the first record. And I asked him, and I go up to him, and he's like, "Oh, go show." Blah, blah. And I had met him a couple years before at a festival in France, and huge fan. And I'm like talking. He's like, "Great show." I'm like, "What?" And and I asked him like, "What's your favorite Blondie record, man?" And he's like, "Oh, the first one, dude." And so I'm like, "Cool." I pulled the first one out of my stack and had him like sign it for me,
Oh, very cool.
and yeah, kind of has stayed in touch. I've sent him a couple of messages, and he replies.
That's cool. So he was
But yeah,
kind of
he's
playing it cool then. He wasn't really telling you who he was at first.
well, I knew who he was.
Uh,
Yeah, he knew I
yeah.
knew who he
Oh, okay.
was. And
No
he's kind
pressure
of
on you
yeah,
to when he's watching you.
yeah, it is. And like he's not just a known drummer, but Blondie. He's one of the most I like his style and Blondie because they like their punk rock ethos and like DIY kind of way to do it, but they were also very pop. They had pop hits and the look. I mean, come on, like they were one of the lookest cooling bands of all time, one of the coolest looking bands of all time, and they were able to do punk rock, but then make it super clean sounding and do this like disco-y poppy shit. Yeah,
that's cool. And it's I didn't know he was there, so I'm gonna have to look through my
look and see if you got him in your video.
Yeah. I'm gonna do an at.
He's probably like looking at my drawing, being like, wrong.
I'm gonna tag you though, because it's a really cool. When Gary's shredding, I got you in the video. It's actually kind of a cool clip from that show. But I remember just going in a little bit early, and sure enough, there you were flipping through the records before the show started. And I said hi, so it's kind of a cool moment for me.
Yeah, when you do those things, they give you like a $75 gift card to Amoeba, and it's like, ooh.
Yeah, get your
bag. And of course, you end up picking up a stack of $200 worth of records, and spending. They know what they're doing. Like, they're gonna get money out of you.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, it's a fun memory, and again, thanks for coming on, and hopefully I'll get to see you play live again one of these days down the road.
Yeah, man, I'll hit you up next time I'm in the Bay Area. So you're in the Bay Area for good?
Yeah, yep.
For a while, yeah.
Anytime you're in Oakland or San Francisco area, that's where I'm at. So
awesome, man. I love it up there. Yeah, definitely hit you up next time.
Awesome. Well, have a good one. Thanks for the time.
Good talking to you, Jim.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.